If you love a good haunted house story, buckle up. Because today you're about to hear some truly terrifying accounts of families who experienced paranormal activity so intense, they were never the same after crossing paths with these homes. Like the story you're about to hear, where a family moves into an old house only to realize it holds far more than just creaky floors and dusty walls. But before we dive in, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you never miss a single bone-chilling tale. I first saw the closet lamp swing by itself on a summer night when the heat was so heavy, it felt like the air was sticking to my skin. But there wasn't a breeze, not even a whisper, and that thing was moving like someone had given it a hard shove. I froze. My first thought was, okay, this isn't right, but I've always been the skeptic of the family, the guy who had an explanation for everything. Draft, old floorboards, old houses have their quirks, but this wasn't something I could explain away. We had moved into that house at the beginning of the year. It was an old mansion built in 1912 with that "I've seen things you can't imagine" look. From the outside, it seemed like just another charming old house, the kind tourists take pictures of. But inside it breathed. You walked in and felt something off, like the air got thicker in the corners, or as if something was always watching you out of the corner of its eye. My sister, who shared the room with me, said it was just my paranoia, until the day she saw it too. It was in the middle of the night. I woke up with that chill down my neck, that alert of, something's wrong here. The bedroom door was slightly open, and I swore I had closed it before going to sleep. Then, from the hallway, a white figure passed by. It wasn't a shadow, it wasn't mist. It was a defined silhouette, as if someone was there, but with no face, no details. Just white. I was paralyzed, trying to convince my brain that I was dreaming. But then my sister sat up in her bed next to me and whispered, "You seeing this too?" We never talked much about what happened that night. It was like speaking out loud would give power to the wrong thing. But after that, things started to escalate. The air conditioner turned on by itself, even with the power switch off. The fan turned off out of nowhere, as if someone had pulled the plug. And the worst? The voices. One day, I was messing with an old recorder I found in the basement. Yes, I was the kind of teenager who snooped where I shouldn't. When I hit play, expecting some old music or something, I heard the sound of a man and a woman arguing. But it wasn't a normal recording, it was distorted like it had been recorded underwater. And in the background, you could hear crying. A soft cry like that of a child. I showed it to my mom and she went pale. She didn't tell me right then, but I later found out that the land our house was on had been a hotel at the beginning of the century. A hotel that caught fire with dozens of people inside. And apparently, some of them never left. But all that was just the beginning. Because the basement was another story. We avoided going down there not because of spiders or dampness, but because there was something wrong with that place. It was like the air got heavier with every step you took, as if the floor sank a little under your feet. And if you were quiet enough, you could hear whispers, not words, not sentences, just voices. And in the middle of all this, there was one thing that gave me strange relief: the woman in black. My mom said she was a protective spirit who appeared to her in dreams and warned her when something bad was about to happen. I never saw her, but sometimes in the worst moments I felt a hand on my shoulder. Cold, but not threatening, as if someone was there, by my side, holding the line between us and whatever else was in that house. But as I said, that was just the beginning. I never believed in things I couldn't explain, but after that night in the basement, something inside me broke. It all started when my little brother began waking up screaming in the middle of the night. He said someone was calling his name, but it wasn't a normal voice. It was like it came from inside the walls. My mom tried to calm us down, saying old houses make noises, that it was just the wind hitting the wood. But we knew. Someone or something was trying to talk to us. Then came the dream, the same one every night. I saw a little girl in a white nightgown, all dirty and burned at the edges. She stood at the end of the hallway staring. She didn't move her mouth, but I heard a cold whisper, "They're coming." I woke up with my heart beating so hard it felt like it was going to come out of my mouth. Until one night, the dream changed. This time, the girl pointed to the basement door. I didn't want to go down there, no one in that house did. But the next day, the air conditioner exploded. Not broke, not burned out, exploded. Like someone had stuffed a grenade inside it. My mom looked at me and said quietly, "It's getting worse." That's when we decided to investigate. I grabbed a flashlight and went down the creaking stairs with my brother behind me. The air was so heavy it felt like I was breathing wet cotton. The flashlight flickered as if the battery was dying, even though it was new. And then we saw it. In the darkest corner where the light barely reached, there was a stain on the wall. It wasn't mold, it wasn't dampness. It was like the wall itself had melted, forming a kind of door. But there was no frame, no handle, just an empty darkness. And as I approached, I felt a cold wind coming from it. My brother tugged at my shirt. "Don't go there," he said, his voice trembling. But something pulled me. Not physically, it was like my body decided to walk on its own. I took a step towards that darkness, and that's when I heard it. A laugh, soft, high-pitched, like that of a child. It came from inside the wall. The flashlight went out. In the dark, something grabbed my wrist. I screamed, I struggled, and the light came back on suddenly. The wall was normal again, no stain, no door, nothing. But on the floor in front of us there was something that hadn't been there before. A porcelain doll with a broken face and a white dress, just like the girl in my dream. We ran upstairs, locked the basement door, and swore never to go down there again. But I knew it was useless, because that night when I went to bed, I saw the doll on top of my closet, and it was smiling. After that night in the basement, the house changed. It wasn't just noises or shadows anymore, it was like the walls were watching. The doll disappeared the next day, but the smell of burning stayed, even though nothing had caught fire. That's when the woman in black appeared to me. I woke up in the middle of the night with someone sitting on the edge of my bed. She had no face, just a dark figure, dense like smoke frozen in the air. But I wasn't afraid, just a sadness so heavy it hurt in my chest. "They want to get out," she whispered, without moving her mouth. "But you can close the portal." The next day, I told my mom. She went pale and went up to the attic, coming back with a box of old photos. Inside, there was a picture of the hotel that burned down in 1912. And in the middle of the flames, in front of the building, you could see a woman in a dark dress, with her arms open as if protecting something. "She's always been here," my mom said. "When the hotel caught fire, she saved who she could. Now she tries to protect us from what got trapped." We decided to cleanse the basement. Not that silly stuff with coarse salt and candles. We went looking for someone who knew what they were doing. He arrived, looked at that stained wall and said quietly, "Things are passing through here, and they're not just souls." The ceremony was simple. Lights, Latin words, the smell of burning incense. But when he threw holy water on the wall, the floor trembled. The flashlight flickered, and for a second, I saw dozens of hands pushing against the surface, as if trying to escape from glass. Then I heard the laugh again. The girl in the white dress was there in the corner with her dark, deep eyes. But this time, behind her, the woman in black appeared, placing a hand on the child's shoulder. The small figure let out a sigh and dissolved. The ritual guy broke out in a cold sweat. "It's done. But this house will never be just yours." He was right. Sometimes I still hear footsteps in the hallway or feel a sudden chill. But the doll never appeared again, and on the quietest nights, if I pay attention, I see a dark figure standing at my bedroom door. Not protecting, just watching. As if waiting for the day we might need her again. What a horror. What did you think of the story? What rating from 0 to 10 would you give it? Leave your opinion in the comments below. The scariest part is that no matter how much we move, sometimes it's like the past never really leaves. And speaking of the past, the next story shows how an ancient tragedy can leave marks that span generations. Stay tuned to find out what happened to a family who discovered that their new home had a past too dark. I'll never forget the first day in that house. It was January 2001, a freezing winter in Spain, and we had barely finished unloading the boxes when the garage door started moving by itself. A slow creak, like someone was trying to open it carefully, but there was no one there. Nothing. Just the wind, my dad said. But wind doesn't close doors that hard, does it? The house was old, with thick walls and wood that cracked with time. Beautiful even. No one told us everything about it, of course. Only later did we find out that the previous owner, well, he didn't leave there in the usual way. We learned from a neighbor, an old man who had lived on the street for decades and liked to tell stories with a crooked smile. "This house has a memory," he said. We laughed at the time, but the laughter died quickly. The first few days were quiet, if you can call it quiet when you feel like there's always a pair of eyes watching you. My mom was the first to notice. She would wake up in the middle of the night to noises upstairs, clear footsteps like someone was walking in circles in the empty room. I swore it was the roof settling, or a rat, but rats don't have a walking cadence, and rats don't whisper. It was on one of those nights that I heard it too. I was in my room, trying to sleep, when I heard that low sound, almost a murmur coming from the hallway. It sounded like a distant conversation, but the words were impossible to understand. When I opened the door, silence. Just the cold. A cold that wasn't from the winter, but from that feeling that something or someone had been there seconds before. But the worst was in the backyard. My dad liked to light bonfires on the coldest nights, and we would gather around laughing, telling stories. Until the day the ashes started forming numbers. No letters, no drawings. Just digits burned into the charred wood. 9, 3, 2, 0, 3, 6. No one knew what it meant until we figured it out. It was a date. The date. The day the previous owner had passed away. My mom started refusing to stay home alone. She said she heard voices in the basement, a low call, like someone was asking for help. But the basement was empty, at least empty of what we could see. I found myself avoiding certain rooms, especially my parents' bedroom. That place had a heaviness in the air, an energy that made us quicken our pace as we passed the door. The last straw was when the garage door started opening by itself again, but this time, in the middle of the night. My dad ran to check, thinking of burglars, and I followed. There was no one. Just that heavy silence, and on the ground, marked in the dust, footprints that stopped in the middle of the garage as if someone had simply disappeared. That's when we understood. The house wasn't empty, and it didn't want us to forget. After that night, we couldn't pretend it was just our imagination anymore. The house had a life of its own, or at least something inside it did. My mom started waking up with thin scratches on her arms, as if nails had passed over her while she slept. My dad, always skeptical, fell silent when we found small handprints. Very small, almost child-sized, on the fogged-up bathroom mirror. I stopped sleeping alone. I asked my little sister to stay in my room, but she was scared too. Once she swore she saw a shadow in the hallway, a thin figure just standing there watching. When she screamed, the light turned on and there was nothing. But the smell, a sweet and rotten odor, like old flowers, lingered in the air for hours. We tried to ignore it, but the house wouldn't let us. Objects disappeared and reappeared in impossible places. My watch, which I was sure I left on the table, was found inside the oven. Cold, as if it had been placed there days ago. My mom found her jewelry sunk in the toilet, as if someone had thrown them there on purpose. And the sounds. God, the sounds didn't stop. Muffled cries behind the walls, taps on the window glass when there was no wind. And worst of all, a panting breath by my bed every time I tried to close my eyes. We called a priest, an old family friend who said he would bless the house. He arrived confidently, but when he entered my parents' bedroom, he paled. He didn't say anything at the time, just performed the ritual quickly, almost in a hurry. When we asked what he had felt, he avoided our eyes. "This house has a very old pain," he murmured. "And whoever left this pain here hasn't left yet." The blessing didn't help. If anything, it made things worse. That very night, the door to my parents' room slammed shut by itself so hard that the picture on the wall fell. When my dad went to check, the room was freezing, and on the mirror, written in the steam, was the same sequence of numbers, 9/3/2036. No one knew what it meant, but I had a hunch, a future date, a warning. That's when we gave up. 2 months after moving in, the whole family was packing up again. My mom couldn't take it anymore, my dad wasn't sleeping, and I just wanted to feel safe again. On the last day, as we were almost leaving, I heard a noise coming from the basement, a low laugh, almost a cry. I stood at the door looking into the darkness, and then I heard, clear as if someone had put their mouth to my ear, a whisper, "You'll be back." We never set foot in that house again. But to this day, when winter comes and the wind blows against the windows of my apartment, I wake up in the middle of the night, sweating. Because sometimes in the silence, I swear I hear the same creak of a door and the sound of footsteps approaching. And worse, I'm afraid that one day they'll arrive. How bizarre. After going through something like that, anyone would think twice before moving again. But as you'll see now, there are people who only realize they're sharing the house with something when it's already too late. Get ready to hear the story of a family that lived for years with the presence of an entity that seemed to want company. I was about 8 years old when I realized that the house we lived in wasn't just strange. It was alive. Not in the sense that the walls breathed or anything like that, but in the way it reacted to us. We lived in that old house at the top of the hill, the kind with creaky wood and windows that would slam shut on their own, even when there was no wind. My dad always said it was the character of the house, but my siblings and I knew there was something more, something that watched us. The basement was the worst place. Every time I went down there to get something, a toolbox, a can of paint, I felt a cold that wasn't normal. It wasn't just chilly air. It was that feeling of pressure, like someone was there, in the darkest corner, waiting for me to get distracted so they could get closer. And the worst part? I heard things. Soft footsteps, almost like someone barefoot, walking slowly behind me. When I turned around, there was nothing, just darkness and that silence that seemed to scream in my ears. One night, I was in my room trying to sleep when I heard tapping on the window. It wasn't branches or the wind, it was fingers. 3 clear taps, like someone was outside trying to get my attention. My heart nearly jumped out of my chest, but I looked, and there was nothing there, just the emptiness of the dark backyard. I told my dad the next day, and he laughed. "Old houses do that," he said. But I knew it was more than that. Then one night I saw her. I woke up with that strange feeling, that weight in the air that says, someone is in your room. When I opened my eyes, I saw a girl in a white dress passing through the hallway door. She didn't look at me, didn't make a sound. She just glided as if she were floating. I froze, I didn't scream, didn't move. Just stayed there, with my blood cold, until daylight came. At breakfast, my brother Ethan looked at me and asked, "Did you see her too?" I didn't even need to answer. He had seen the same thing. The girl in white. After that, we started closing our bedroom door every night. Not that it helped much. Once, the door opened by itself, slowly, as if someone was pushing it from behind, and the noises only got worse. The billiard table in the basement, which we never used, started making noises in the middle of the night like balls rolling and hitting each other. My dad would go down to check, and there they were, all the balls on the floor, as if someone had played an entire game by themselves. One night, my dad had enough. He went downstairs and shouted, as if he were arguing with someone, "If you want to stay here, stay, but stop scaring my kids." And you know what's the craziest part? For a while, it stopped. The house went quiet. We even thought it was over. But then the TV turned on by itself. It was one of those old tube TVs in the living room. No one had touched the remote. It just turned on, full of static, with that hissing sound that almost seems like whispering voices. And worse, I knew there was someone behind me while I was looking at the screen. Something that was smiling. That's when I truly understood. The house wasn't haunted. It was hers, the girl in whites, and she didn't want us to forget it. After the TV turned on by itself, we started to realize that the girl in white wasn't just a passing shadow. She had habits, routines, and the worst part? She liked to play with us. My brother Ethan was the first to discover this. He had a room at the end of the hallway, near the bathroom, and he always complained about hearing footsteps in the hallway in the middle of the night. They weren't normal footsteps, the kind you recognize. They were dragging, as if someone was crawling along the floor. One night he swore he heard scratches on the door. Not cat scratches, but nails, as if someone was trying to dig into the wood to get in. When he opened the door, there was nothing, just the empty hallway and that strange smell, half sweet, half rotten, that we always associated with her. But the most absurd thing happened with the Nintendo. We had an old console in the living room, and the controller always went missing. We thought one of us was hiding it, until the day the controller flew by itself down the hallway. I saw it. It was on top of the table, and suddenly, bam! It was thrown as if someone had angrily hit it. My little brother Logan started to cry. He was only 6 years old and the most scared of all of us. And then Logan saw her too. He woke up in the middle of the night with the feeling that someone was in his room. When he opened his eyes, the girl in white was standing next to his bed, looking at him. This time, she wasn't just passing by. She was standing there. Logan said her face was pale, almost featureless, but he knew she was smiling. He screamed, and when my dad ran to check, there was nothing there. Just the cold room and that heavy silence again. My dad, who before only told us not to make things up, started to believe. He didn't admit it, but you could see it in the way he looked at the dark corners of the house, as if he expected to see something. Once he confessed that he also felt it. That sensation of not being alone, even when the house was empty. And the events only got more intense. There was a night I woke up to my bedroom door slamming, like someone had run out. When I got up, I saw marks on the floor. Small, wet footprints of a child. Going from my room to the bathroom, I followed them, my heart in my throat, and when I got there, the faucet was on. Water running, but there was no one there. Just the foggy mirror, and in it, for a second, I swear I saw the reflection of someone behind me. We started avoiding certain places in the house. The basement became forbidden territory. The hallway at night seemed longer, as if the house was stretching to keep us trapped inside. And the girl? She was everywhere. Not always visible, but present. In the cold breeze that came out of nowhere. In the sound of someone walking upstairs when everyone was in the living room. In the way things disappeared and reappeared in impossible places. We knew she wasn't going away. And the worst part? We started to think she had never been alone. It was when we discovered the history of the house that everything started to make sense. My dad, tired of the scares, decided to ask the older neighbors if anything strange had ever happened there. And that's when the pieces fell into place. Years before we moved in, a family had lived in that house, a couple and their little daughter. The girl drowned in the river behind the hill, and her parents, destroyed, moved away shortly after. No one could say if it was an accident or something worse, but one thing was certain: she never left that place. After this revelation, the energy of the house changed. Her little pranks became more intense. Objects started falling off the shelves for no reason. We heard low laughter in the corners of the house, the kind that makes your blood run cold. And the worst part? Sometimes we woke up with breaths in our ears, as if someone was there, breathing very close. One night I was home alone when the lights started flickering. Then came the noise, something heavy dragging upstairs. I ran to my parents' room, but the door was locked. And then I felt it. That cold, that weight. Someone was behind me. When I turned around, she was there, the girl in white. But this time she wasn't just a shadow. Her eyes were deep, dark, and that smile. God, that smile wasn't of a child. She raised her hand slowly and pointed to the stairs. I knew what she wanted. She wanted me to go up, to go see what was there, but I didn't move a muscle. I was paralyzed until the lights came back on and she just disappeared. The next day, my dad announced that we were moving. There was no discussion, no explanation. He just looked at us and said, "This house isn't ours." The last night there was the worst. The whole house seemed to wake up. Doors slamming, glass breaking, voices whispering in the hallways. We all slept together in the living room with the lights on, waiting for dawn. When we finally left, I swear I saw her, standing in the window of my room, watching us go. And even after all these years, I still dream about that house. Sometimes in the middle of the night I wake up with a chill down my spine, and I know she's still there, waiting. Because some things never let you go. Creepy, right? And don't think this kind of thing is rare. Truth is, some families just seem to attract this kind of energy. And the scariest part? Sometimes it's not just one spirit. It's like the whole house is alive. And that's exactly what you're about to see in the next story. But before we move on, if you've made it this far, it means you're loving these horror stories. So go ahead and smash that like button to let YouTube know you're into this kind of content, and never miss another terrifying tale. I'll always remember the first night in that cursed house. We had just arrived from the city, tired of the chaos, the noise, the traffic. My parents wanted a quiet place, far from the urban madness, and they found that old house in the countryside. It seemed perfect, until the sun went down. The first strange thing was the smell. It wasn't mold. It wasn't dirt. It was something heavier, as if the air was filled with something that shouldn't have been there. But I ignored it. After all, old houses have their own aromas, right? Night fell and I went to bed exhausted. My parents were sleeping in the room next door, and everything seemed calm. Until I felt the mattress sink. It wasn't a normal adjustment like when you turn to your side. It was as if someone had lain down right beside me. I froze. My heart raced, but I didn't have the courage to open my eyes. I took a deep breath and thought, it's just my imagination. The house is new, the mattress is different. But then came the worst part, a cold breath on the back of my neck. I turned quickly, expecting to see a bug, a tangled sheet, anything. But there was nothing. Just emptiness, and that feeling that something was there, watching me. I was paralyzed, listening to every creak of the house, every rustle of the trees outside, until I heard something that made me jump out of bed. A voice singing in the bathroom. It was soft, almost a whisper, but I could make out the melody. An old song, the kind my grandmother used to sing. I thought, it's my mom. She must have gone to the bathroom. But when I looked at my parents' room, the door was closed, and I could hear my dad snoring. Still, I went to the bathroom, my heart in my throat. The door was slightly open and the light was on. "Mom?" I called softly. Nothing. I pushed the door slowly, expecting to see her getting ready or washing her face. But the bathroom was empty. The faucet dripped and the foggy mirror seemed different. I can't explain it, but there was something wrong with that reflection, as if it wasn't just my face looking back. I ran back to my room and buried myself under the covers. At that moment, I already knew that house wasn't empty. Someone or something lived there with us, and it seemed like it didn't like our visit. In the following days, the strange events only got worse. Objects disappeared and reappeared in impossible places. My mom swore she heard footsteps in the hallway when everyone was asleep, and I started seeing figures. Not the kind you confuse with the shadow of a swaying curtain. They were human shapes that disappeared when I turned my head. The last straw was when my mom woke up with hand marks on her arm. Thin scratches, as if someone had grabbed her forcefully. My dad, skeptical as always, tried to find an explanation. It must have been a nightmare. You scratched yourself without realizing it. But we knew. The house had a negative energy, a presence that didn't want us there. And the worst part? I was the only one it seemed to watch directly. Whenever I was alone, I felt that chill down my spine, that weight in the air. Even my cat, who usually slept at my feet, started avoiding my room. And when an animal flees from a place, you know something's wrong. My mom, who had always been religious, started placing crosses and blessed candles around the house. But nothing worked. The voices continued, the footsteps too. And every night, without fail, I felt someone lying down beside me in bed. Until one day she couldn't take it anymore. "We can't stay here," she said, tears in her eyes. "This house is going to destroy us." And that's how the decision was made. We were leaving. It didn't matter about the loss, the work to find another place. Fear had won. But even after packing our bags, I knew it wasn't over. Because some things, they don't stay trapped in one place. They follow you. And I felt that presence was still with me. We left that house as if we were fleeing from a fire. We didn't even wait for the moving truck to arrive properly. We threw the essentials into the car and left before sunset. My mom didn't look back even once. My dad, who had always doubted everything, now drove in silence, his knuckles white from gripping the steering wheel so hard. The new apartment was small, noisy, full of city lights. And I had never loved a place so much in my life. For the first time in weeks, I managed to sleep without fear. I thought it was over. But things are never that simple, are they? 2 days after the move, I woke up in the middle of the night with that same weight on the mattress. My breath caught in my chest when I realized it had come with us. This time, there was no singing in the bathroom, no whispers. Just that heavy silence, that cold that didn't come from the air conditioning. And then, the smell. That same sweet and rotten smell from the old house. My mom started having nightmares every night. She would wake up screaming, saying that a woman in a white dress stood at the foot of her bed, staring. My dad, finally truly scared, called a priest. The old man threw holy water on the walls, prayed in Latin. But when I looked at the corner of the room during the prayer, I saw a shadow moving, and it was smiling. Things got worse quickly. Pots fell from the sink by themselves. The radio turned on in the middle of the night, tuned to static. Once, my dad woke up with the clear impression of fingers around his neck, but there were no marks. We were going crazy, and I knew that if we didn't do something, it was going to end badly. It was my mom who discovered it. In a trunk of old photos that we almost didn't take, she found an old newspaper hidden under a pile of clothes. The headline talked about a woman who had died in that house decades ago, hanged in her own room. And the worst part? She wasn't alone. There was a baby in the crib when it happened. That information hit like a bomb. Suddenly, everything made sense. The soft crying I sometimes heard. The feeling that something small and wrong nestled beside me in bed. The woman wasn't just haunting us, she was looking for something. Or someone. The last night in the apartment was the worst. I woke up with the bed shaking, as if someone were shaking it. When I opened my eyes, I saw, right in my face, a pale woman, with dark, deep eyes, her neck marked by an invisible rope. She opened her mouth, and a sound came out that wasn't a voice, wasn't a scream. It was the cry of a baby. I screamed until I was hoarse. My parents ran in, turned on all the lights, but when they looked at me, they turned pale. My mom started to cry. On my arm, as if someone had traced it with a nail, were 3 thin, red scratches. The next day, we fled again. This time, far away. My mom burned photos, clothes, anything that had come from that house. My dad, for the first time in his life, admitted that he had no explanation. Months have passed. We try not to talk about it, but sometimes when I'm alone in the dark, I still feel the mattress sink beside me, and I know she won't go away. Because some stories, they don't have a happy ending. Some things just learn to follow you, and I don't know what to do to get rid of her. How scary. What did you think of the story? What rating from 0 to 10 would you give it? Leave your opinion in the comments below. I saw it on my second day in the house. I was organizing boxes in the living room, that pile of stuff we accumulate without realizing, when I felt a chill on the back of my neck. It wasn't the wind because the windows were closed. It was something different, as if the air had gotten heavier. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw the curtain moving. It wasn't a gentle sway. Something, or someone, pulled that heavy fabric hard, as if trying to get my attention. My heart raced. I turned quickly, expecting to see a burglar, an animal, anything that could explain it. But there was nothing. The curtain was still, the room empty, and the silence. A silence so thick you could hear the old creak of the wood beneath my feet. "Is anyone there?" My voice came out weaker than I intended. Nothing. Just the echo of that cursed house. I knew the place's history wasn't great. The realtor tried to downplay it when we signed the contract. Historic house, 1910, full of charm. What he didn't say was that the previous owners had died in a car accident, both of them on the same night. And before them? Well, the house had been a church rectory, but something went wrong during construction. A scandal, missing workers, things the older neighbors whispered about when they thought no one was listening. On the first night, the noises started. They weren't the normal creaks of an old house. They were deliberate. Footsteps in the hallway, even when I was the only one up. Knocking on the stairs 3 times in a row, as if someone was slowly climbing, stopping halfway to taunt me. And the furniture. God, the furniture. I swear the armchair in the living room moved on its own. I'd leave for work in the morning and it would be near the window. I'd come back at night and it would be against the opposite wall, as if it had dragged itself there. My family thought I was going crazy. My wife Carla laughed when I told her about the curtain. "You're stressed about the move, honey, it's just the wind." But she wasn't there. She didn't feel what I felt. That weight in the air, the sensation of being watched, even when the doors were locked. And then one night I woke up to a noise downstairs. Something heavy being dragged. I went down the stairs with a knife in my hand. Yes, I was that desperate, and almost fell on the last step. The kitchen table, that heavy wooden thing that 4 men had barely managed to carry, was in the middle of the living room. And the chairs? Lined up, perfect, as if someone was about to receive guests. I looked around, sweating. The house was dark, silent again. But I knew I wasn't alone. Someone or something was there with me. And worse, it was enjoying itself. The next day I started researching. The history of the house, old reports, anything that could explain what was happening. That's when I found out about the priest who lived there in the 1920s. A guy who, according to the newspapers of the time, disappeared under mysterious circumstances. And the residents who came after? They all reported similar things. Voices, knocks, furniture moving on its own. One of them even wrote a letter before moving out. This house is not empty. It is occupied. I looked at the ceiling that night, lying in bed, listening to the footsteps in the hallway again, and for the first time, I understood. They didn't want to scare us, they wanted us to leave. I couldn't take it anymore. After that night with the footsteps in the hallway, I decided I was going to face whatever was there. I couldn't live like that, afraid of the dark, of shadows, of every creak of that cursed house. So I grabbed a flashlight and went down the stairs, determined to find some explanation. The basement was the only place I hadn't explored properly. The hatch was under the kitchen, hidden behind an old rug. When I pulled the iron handle, a smell of mold and something else, something sweet and rotten like spoiled meat, rose to my nose. My stomach turned, but I continued. The wooden steps groaned under my weight, as if complaining about my intrusion. The flashlight only lit up one piece at a time, and I swear I saw things moving in the corner of my vision. Spider webs swaying without wind, shadows that seemed to stretch when I turned my back. At the bottom of the basement there was a door. Small, rotting wood with a rusty lock. Something pulled me toward it, as if I needed to open it. My hands trembled as I pushed the handle, and the creak it made echoed like a scream in that silence. Inside, there was only one thing, an altar. Melted candles, dark stains on the floor that I didn't even want to imagine what they were, and in the center, a black and white photo of a man in a cassock. The priest who had disappeared. His eyes in the photo seemed to follow me, and I felt a chill so intense that my teeth chattered. That's when I heard it. "You shouldn't have come here." The voice came from behind me, whispered, hoarse, as if it hadn't spoken in years. I turned so fast I almost fell, but there was no one there, just the darkness of the basement and that feeling that something was approaching. I ran. I took the steps 2 at a time, my heart beating so hard I thought it would explode. When I reached the kitchen, the basement door slammed shut behind me with a bang that made the dishes in the cabinet tremble. That night, I packed what I could and took my family to a hotel. Carla finally believed me when she saw the state I was in. Pale, sweating, looking at every corner as if expecting something to jump out. The next day, we hired a guy who claimed to understand these things. He arrived with incense, holy water, a bunch of gadgets, but when he entered the house, his blood seemed to freeze. "There's more than one here," he said quietly, "and they're not friendly." He tried a ritual, but the candles kept going out on their own. The wind blew inside the house, even with everything closed, and in the middle of it all, I heard it. This time clear, as if someone was right beside me. "Get out of our house." That's when I truly understood. They weren't trapped there. They were the house. We moved out that same day. We left furniture, clothes, everything. It wasn't worth the risk. Sometimes I still pass by that place just to see. The curtains move, even with no one inside. And if I stand there too long, I feel that same chill on the back of my neck, as if they were still watching me, waiting. Now, if you're still here with me, seriously, you're my kind of person. You love a good scare, but also a story that makes you think, right? So go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because this channel is packed with stories that'll send chills down your spine, and maybe even change how you see things. Oh, and drop a comment below saying, "I made it to the end," just so I know you stuck with me till the very last second. Like someone brave enough to walk through a graveyard at midnight. And hey, if this video kept you hooked, don't forget to smash that like button. It really helps keep these bizarre, terrifying, and sometimes even heartbreaking stories coming. Just like this last one. Oh, and don't go anywhere just yet. There's another video right over here that, if you like this one, will leave you even more unsettled. Click on it and let's keep diving into the darker side of storytelling. I'll see you there.